Welcome back to The Look and Sound of Leadership, an ongoing series of executive coaching tips designed to help you be perceived in the workplace the way you want to be perceived. I'm Tom Henschel, your executive coach, and today we're talking about building listening. Deepa was shocked. She began a denial, then smiled and said, "I hadn't the slightest clue." Deepa and I were almost halfway into a 6-month coaching engagement. At the outset, I'd gathered feedback about her from senior leaders, peers, and direct reports. Her feedback had 2 resounding themes. First, everyone liked Deepa. She was naturally caring and kind. Second, everyone was desperate for her to improve her listening skills. Not surprisingly, she and I had talked about listening during every one of our coaching conversations. During our conversations, she told me about the excitement of growing up in a boisterous family. She told me of having always felt empowered to speak up. That comfort in speaking up, even when she was junior, got her positive attention, and it drew mentors to her. The part of her that was seen as fearless served her well as she competed in the male-dominated world of large-scale construction. Now, that same strength was becoming a liability. As a vice president overseeing operations, she was dominating rooms in a way that left people feeling unheard. Because she was so well-liked, she hadn't overdrawn her Goodwill bank account yet, but clearly people wanted her to up her game when it came to listening. One tool we had discussed was self-awareness. Did she know when she was talking and when she wasn't? Did she know what she was saying? Was she agreeing, disagreeing, lecturing, interrogating? She discovered that no, she often did not know those things. Her ongoing homework in the coaching was to stretch her listening awareness muscle, and she had reported she felt she was getting better. And then, in our coaching conversation, she had asked me a question. I'd responded by saying I had 2 ideas. Not far into my first idea, she jumped in, interrupting me. And then she went on a fairly long explanation. When she finished, I asked, "Do you know you interrupted me?" "I did? When?" "Just now," I said, "when I was answering your question." That's when Deepa was shocked. Her first impulse to deny that it had happened was simply because her brain had no record of it. But her natural humility kicked in, allowing her to say, "I hadn't the slightest clue." I saw her deflate as the size of her unawareness hit her. "This is terrible, Tom," she said. "I thought I was doing better." "And I'd wager you are sometimes, just not right then with me." She smiled. "You're kind. But this is serious. How can I get better if I don't even know when I need to get better?" I gave a little laugh. "That is how you get better, Deepa, by paying attention to what you're doing. It doesn't matter what it is, cooking, driving, managing the books. Getting better starts with self-awareness. You ask yourself, are you getting the results you want? If not, why not?" "Yes, of course," she said, "but I can't even seem to get to the baseline. I mean, look at what just happened. That is not self-awareness." I asked, "Deepa, what would it mean if you accepted that that might be true? It might be true that many times a day you interrupt people and haven't the slightest clue. What would that mean?" She considered the question. "It would mean I'm a beginner, not a place I want to be at this stage of my career." "Because?" I asked. "Because it was hard to get here. I don't want people to think I'm not ready." "So if you were a beginner in your listening skills, it would mean you're not ready to be a vice president," I said. No, of course not," she said defensively. And then immediately, "Well, yeah. I worry I'm going to look like I'm not ready if I have to be learning something so basic. It's humbling." I nodded and watched. She took a breath like someone girding herself for battle. She said, "Okay, I had better be the best damn student ever. Let's go." She took another breath and slowed herself down. As if figuring out a recipe, she asked, "If I want steps to be a better listener, would I start with self-awareness? Or have I already missed a step?" "No, you haven't," I answered. "Self-awareness is the first step to being a better listener. It's unfortunate since we know I already suck at it, she said. But let's just stick with this for a minute. What else can I do to get more self-aware? I said, start with that idea we talked about. Accept that listening is an underdeveloped muscle that needs your attention. Accept that you interrupt people and at some point it could cost you. Accept those as truths. And that will raise my awareness, she asked. I think it will, I said. I went on, and then assess yourself. Keep a listening journal in your head. Reflect. How did I do on that call? How was that meeting, that conversation? Keep building your awareness muscle. She shook her head with a smile. I could reflect for a month and still not see what I can't see. I nodded. I suppose. But if you focus on it, I think your vision will get better. She nodded back. Good point. Okay. Awareness and reflection. What's next? Choose, I said. I remember when I was working on my listening skills, over and over, I had to consciously choose to focus on what was going on in front of me. It would happen all the time. Something the other person said would trigger a whole movie in my head. The other person would be telling me about something their daughter did, and suddenly I'm watching a movie in my head of a trip I took to New Zealand with my daughter. Deepa gave a little slap of the table and said, Yep, happens all the time. All the time. Right, I said. I think we all do it. I taught myself to choose. Did I want to watch the movie or listen to the person in front of me? Choose. She said, So it's really self-awareness again. In many ways, yes, I replied. You can't choose if you don't have any awareness. But I think of the choosing as separate. First you know it. That's that movie that goes off in my head. That's the awareness. But then I choose not to take the bait. I choose to stay focused on what's in front of me. That's very active, she said. Agreed. Choosing is active. And empowering, she said. So awareness, reflection, choosing. What next? Words, I said. What do you say when you're listening? Active listening, right? She said, we talked about this. Right, yes, good. What do you remember? She ticked on 2 fingers. That I can focus on facts, ask a lot of questions, without interrupting, of course, or I could focus on feelings. And there was a thing you showed me how to do that. What did you call that? I don't know. I said, mirroring? Right, she said. You hear what someone is saying, and you repeat it back to them. I did that with my daughter-in-law when they were here last month, and it was perfect. She thinks I'm bossy. Well, I am bossy. So a lot of times, she won't talk when she's around me. But she started telling me about a series of incidents they had with a family in their neighborhood, and she ended up telling me every little detail, and I could tell she hadn't planned to, but I just kept mirroring her, and she kept talking. And later on, my son told me she had really liked talking with me. Well, good for you, Deepa, I asked. Was it hard? Not really. It was kind of fun, actually. What did it sound like? I asked. Do you remember? She would say something like, so-and-so did such and such, and that really pissed me off. And I would say, did it? Or she would say, so I really told them my opinion. And I'd say, your opinion? And she would keep talking. That's great, I said. And the other one, the fact-finding one, I did that in a meeting recently. It was hard not to jump in, but I didn't. I just kept asking really specific questions and taking a lot of notes. How do you think it was received? I asked. It was a good meeting. We got a lot done. It wasn't an interrogation, if that's what you're worried about. I did what you told me about. Listen to the information, sort it, then ask what you need to know. I've always been pretty good at that anyway. Impatient, but good. I believe you, I said. So, she said, awareness, reflection, choose, and then you listen for facts or listen for feelings. Anything else? Well, there's a lot, of course, but the last one that I would put on this list today, don't judge. Listen and stay neutral. Don't evaluate whatever they say. Just accept their truth. Stay focused on them. Listen. Don't judge. She gave a happy snort. Fat chance. I understand the reasoning, but really, do people who are good listeners turn off their judgment? Do you? I said, good listeners don't stop their critical thinking, no. but they do stop judging what the other person is saying. Oh, she was pissed off, was she, big baby? Or you gave them your opinion, did you? Well, bet that was fun. No, you don't judge. You keep yourself out of it. Stay neutral. Listen. Deepa said, it's really all a head game, isn't it? Listening, I mean. It is 100% in your head, I agreed, which is why I know it can be developed. You will get better at this, Deepa. And she did. By the time her coaching ended, she was getting positive feedback from all directions. Her natural likability was suddenly enhanced by her emerging capacity to listen, which allowed her to show up with the look and sound of leadership. Whew, there were a lot of tools in this episode, huh? I really hope you don't feel fire-hosed. If you do, I have the antidote. To support this episode, we've created a learning tool all about listening. And it has the model you just heard me walk through with Deepa, awareness, reflection, choose that one. But it has 5 or 6 more pages with other models. It has assessments. And the assessments, I got to say, have really interesting ideas on them. There's one there. I remember when I read it for the first time, the idea was that great listeners are comfortable in silence. And at that time when I read it, I was not comfortable in silence. And that became a goal for me, a really tangible goal that I could measure, something I could work on. That one idea out of that assessment changed me. I hope there's an idea in this PDF or any one of our PDFs that's as rich for you as it was for me. The link is in the show notes. Please help yourself. Okay. In this part of the show, I want to do 3 things. I want to play a game with you called First Words. I want to give you some mindsets for listening. And I want to give you an exercise that I think is going to mess with your mind. The first and last ones, by the way, are muscle building skills practice. They're both going to help you get better at the mechanics of listening. And the middle one, the mindsets, those are going to help you deepen your listening. So, okay, you ready? So first, the game, First Words. In this game, your goal is to speak as few words as possible in order to keep the other person talking. So it's a listening game of keeping the other person talking. That's the mechanics. So imagine a transcript. There's a huge, long, unbroken block of text. Then there's one short line. Then another long, unbroken block of text. The 2 long blocks of text are the other person talking. And that short line in the middle, that is a perfect first words. That would win the game. So we're going to play the game. I'm going to give you the tiniest sketch of a situation, then a line of dialogue. And the game is, what do you say next? What would your first words be in order to keep the other person talking? All right, we're going to do this 3 times. You ready? Here's the first one. You're talking with someone at work. They explain a situation to you, and it is complicated. There are lots of moving parts, lots of possible ways that it could end. They stop speaking by looking at you and saying, what would you do? You want to keep them talking. What are your first words? Here's number 2. Someone at work says to you, I'm not making a very good impression in those meetings. How do you keep them talking? What are your first words? Here's the last one. Someone says, I could never do that to anyone. Could you? And you say, what are your first words? Oh my goodness, I would really be interested to hear what your answers are. But here's the question that I think needs to be addressed, which is, were you able to get to answers that you think would have kept the other person talking? The goal of the first words game is to make you conscious that when someone else is speaking, the very next thing you say, your first words, are either going to keep the other person talking or not. I play this game with myself and I call it first words because those first words used to be my last words. It used to be that I'd be talking with someone and they'd stop talking and I'd reply with my thoughts, my suggestions, my story, whatever, and then I would toss the conversational ball back to them. Those were my last words. But as I developed my listening skill, I wanted those last words to become my first words. I realized that, my thoughts and my suggestions and my stories, they could all wait. It wasn't that they weren't important, but they could wait. And so I wanted to move the last words up to be first words. As I got good at it, I just want to tell you it changed my relationships with everyone, work, home, everywhere. And I really think it would for you too. It is a mechanical skill that you can work on. It won't deepen your listening, but it'll make you a better listener. Now I want to use those 3 first word examples to get to number 2, mindsets that are going to drive your listening deeper. So let me start with the first one, right? The first one, someone explains a situation, looks right at you and says, "What would you do?" They are asking you to fix their problem for them. And I think it is so hard to not take the bait. It's hard to not give advice, not be wise, not be helpful, right? The mindset that will drive you to deeper listening is to be clear on why you are listening. You are not listening to fix anything. You are listening to learn. You are listening to learn about their situation, learn what they think of it, learn what they want to do about it. If I were listening to learn and someone looked at me and said, "What would you do?" my first words would be something like, "I have no idea. What do you want to do?" That's it. And they keep talking. Listen to learn. It's a mindset for deeper listening. Okay, number 2, second example. Someone says, "I'm not making a very good impression at those meetings." Oh boy. There are so many feelings in there, right? And the question is, how do you respond to feeling statements, right? What is your first response? Many people go with reassurance. No, 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 I'm sure it'll be fine, right? They minimize and they placate. Some people are sympathetic. Hey, look, I don't think anyone likes his meetings, right? And some people give advice, right? They say, if you're feeling that way, you know what you might try? All of those are fine, but none of them is deep listening. Not the way we're talking about it here. Deep listening means allowing the other person to have their feelings. You don't have to soothe them. You don't have to match them. You don't have to comfort them. The mindset here is that feelings are natural and healthy. Their feelings are just data for you. Important data, but it's not about you. The listening mindset accepts that feelings are. So if I had that mindset and they said to me, "I'm not making a very good impression in those meetings," I think I would say, "What's your concern?" Right? I'm listening to learn, and I'm willing to move towards the feelings, right? Because feelings just are. What's your concern? The mindset here, feelings are natural. And here comes number 3, right? Someone says, "I could never do that to anyone. Could you?" The speaker is inviting you to become their ally. They are asking you to take their side. And for a lot of people, myself included, that invitation is so hard to resist. I am wired to be collaborative and agreeable. But if I'm suddenly on their side of the table with them, I'm not going to be able to listen deeply. Do you remember the idea that I said to Deepa about good listeners don't turn off their critical thinking? I need to stay on my side of the table so that I can keep my critical thinking on. The mindset that helps me keep my critical thinking on in a situation like this is, I am separate. I'm not listening to take sides or debate or persuade or anything. If I have reactions, they can wait. I stay separate so that this person can tell their story their way. I am going to make space for them. I'm separate. So if I'm listening and I know that I am separate and they say to me, "Well, I could never do that to anyone. Could you?" My answer would probably be something like, "Sounds like you're pissed off." Right? I am nowhere in that reply. It's all about them. I am separate. And again, it moves towards feelings, not away. So the 3 mindsets: listen to learn. Feelings are natural. Stay separate. And then there's the idea that your first words matter, right? So that's where we are. The third thing I promised you is an exercise that I think will mess with your mind. I'm going to share it with you right after this month's gratitude. This month, gratitude to the Los Angeles chapter of the International Coach Federation, ICFLA. Many of you have heard about the special interest group that I host for executive coaches. We meet 6 times a year. We are sponsored by ICF Los Angeles. The Special Interest Group just released the results of our annual pricing survey. 122 executive coaches responded to our survey about how they price their coaching services. And the LA chapter put the report on their homepage for you to download. It's free. If you're a coach working for yourself, grab it. Take a look. The links to the report, it's in the show notes, and there's also a link to the Special Interest Group. A lot of you have joined this past year, by the way, and it has been great to have you. We have coaches who are just starting their journey. We have coaches like me who've been coaching forever. You can join no matter where you are on your coaching journey. We would love to have you. So that's first gratitude. Thank you to the coaches, and thank you to the chapter. Gratitude this month to a listener in Spain who goes by Richard Stokes Barcelona. Richard Stokes Barcelona posted a review with the title, Simply the Best. He ended by saying, Tom and the team are really sharing possibly the best leadership content available in podcast format. Thank you, Richard Stokes Barcelona. I am grateful, and I am particularly grateful for your shout out to the team. I couldn't agree more. I am so grateful to them. So thank you. Okay, a listening exercise that I think is going to mess with your mind. So this is called parroting. Parrot, like a talking bird. It is a muscle-building exercise, and I caution you, do not do this exercise if you're in the middle of a serious conversation with your boss or your partner. This exercise is very distracting, and it is what I mean when I say it's going to mess with your mind. It will. And it is also one of the fastest ways to teach your brain to capture what you hear. You're going to keep a 30-second rolling window of what you hear. So you're going to listen for 30 seconds, and if I suddenly snap my fingers and say, what did you and I just say? You would be able to repeat back, like reading from a transcript, like a parrot, the last 30 seconds. You're going to record every 30 seconds, and then let it go and record the next 30 seconds, and then let those go and the next 30 seconds. And you're going to see how hard it is to listen like that, but it will build your muscles, just as the first words exercise will build your muscles. And those three mindsets are going to deepen your listening. So there's lots of tools here. If you want to keep developing your listening skills, 5 episodes of the show you might listen to are a breakdown of listening, leadership and listening, Listen Without an Agenda, The Sound of Leadership and Management 2023, and Unlocking Executive Presence Through Emotional Intelligence. All the links are in the show notes, and don't forget the pricing survey in the show notes too, and the PDF with the models and the assessments. Okay, that's it from me. Until next time, I'm Tom Henschel. Thanks so much for listening.